On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, hiding your credit card debt. So, welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Shawn Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and welcome remote today, your financial coach, George Corbello, live from New York. It's your financial coach, George Corbello. Welcome,
I
George.
would say, right, exactly. Let's not get copyright issues here, buddy. You're a lawyer. You're not supposed to do that. Yes, a welcome from officially New Jersey, because New York's a little too expensive to kind of be housed. But yes, I'm in New York City, doing some things for, my daughter and just helping her
You're
out in her little career. So
you're
that's,
being a
yeah.
good dad.
Again, sometimes, I got to earn that Father's Day gift. So this is my way of doing that.
So how's it going with the no spend challenge in New Jersey?
New Jersey and New York, let me tell you right now, I did post recently that a need or a want is New York style pizza. It's a hard decision, my friend, but I got to say a slice of pizza in New York City is almost 550, I think it is, for
Wow.
one slice. So yeah, it's a big debate. I still have to leave New York City, um, with at least eating one slice of good pizza from my old Diane's Pizza on the Grand Concourse. But yes,
It's a
I would
need.
say it's a tough one. It's a
It's a
tough one
need.
here.
It's a
But
need.
I'm not doing very well, my friend. Hey, I didn't do bottled water or any of the airport. I get sucked into the airport, purchasing. You know how easy it is to go. I need something at the airport. I'm hungry, and all of a sudden you're spending $40 at the airport just to eat a bagel.
I remember when we went on our Arizona trip a few months back, I needed that Bloody Mary first thing in the morning at the airport. I needed it.
Well, I gotta say, but so what's the numbers? What's the numbers count right
So
now?
I'm up. What did I
As
say?
we are recording.
I'm up at about $90 so far.
$90. Okay, so I gotta say the only reason why I'm up, I'm up at 169. So I'm gonna try to say I'll pat my bat, but I think what ended up happening is I was up for my registration this month. And I was like, again, the question is, do I need 2 year registration for my cars itself? Usually we do the 1 year kind of thing. And I was like, there's 2 years. I don't have to think about it for 2 years. But then again, hey, we're like in a no spend challenge. I was like, well, I don't need it. I could just do what I need to do for the year and kind of go. So that's the only reason why I was like, okay, I got a big savings there. Because I think it's like $90 for the 2 years. If you
Yeah.
don't do the 2 years, it's like 45. So I was just like, 45 is enough. I'll see you next year.
Yeah, I think the only reason I would do something like that, where I would buy more than 1 year or more than 1 month or more than one whatever, is if it gave me a big discount. If I got a
Yeah.
discount, then I might consider buying multiple years. But I think the DMV, the Department of Revenue, the Department of Motor Vehicles, I think they just, if you want 1 year, it's this, and if you want 2 years, you double it.
I think there was a slight discount, but then they were oh, by the way, there's a convenience fee, a service fee, another fee, and so by the time I would save the money, again, there's no savings at that point. So I'm like, okay, 1 year, we're good.
So the interesting thing for me is I went into this saying I want to save some money, but I think what I'm learning is about myself is two
Hmm.
things. Number one, I've already kind of cut my budget even before the no spend challenge. I really only spend truly on stuff that are necessities, or if I
Yep.
want something I'll save up to buy it. I really don't buy a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily need. I think that's first. But
Hmm.
the second part is I've actually changed habits a little bit. So you and I talked about this when instead of buying lunch here at the office, I've been making and bringing my lunch almost every day. I think I've hit
Right.
almost every day except two or three. But that's created a new habit of when I make the boys their lunch for summer camp, I make myself lunch for the office and I just bring lunch into the office. And I'm probably ending up saving more money from the office budget because typically, if I'm here at the office and I get lunch, the law firm pays for it. So now I'm saving money in my law firm budget by bringing lunch with me, which is going to end up making me more money in the long run anyway. And I've been putting aside $10, but I'm sure I'm saving more than that by not buying lunch. I'm sure,
Yeah.
$10
Yeah, on
bucks.
average, $10. Like you can easily spend 15, And then, hey, like everybody else, you're supposed to Uber because, of
Right.
course, you can't leave your office.
Can't leave
You
the
have to have the
office.
food show up to you.
Have to
So
have it.
you're saving some money there. I gotta agree with you. I think my wife and I learned through the years to kind of tighten up in the sense that we're not doing things. But I think I've noticed is anytime the wants start to come to play, it's always the kids. It's
Yeah.
always like stuff we do for the kids, like, let's they need these new pair of jeans that that say juicy.
Right. No.
They need all of and that's where I think that just allows us to really kind of, hey, is it really necessary at this point? Let's maybe eventually, how your kids are growing a lot faster than mine. Mine are a little older, so it's more of like, their growth spurts are done. But it's one of those where my kids are always like, the new pair of jeans,
Right.
new pair of sneakers, or new pair of, or again, I have girls, so makeup. I need this. I'm like, girls, you're beautiful already. No worries.
So,
But of course, they'll justify their way to try to get that. No spend this month, but next month, I'd imagine they'll be trying to go back and renegotiating.
I told this story on the show a couple of times. When I was going to college, my dad got me my first credit card. And he said, look,
Hmm.
I'll pay it off if you spend it on emergencies. And so I would call him up and say, Dad, I've been eating ramen noodles for like 2 weeks straight. Can I go buy some stuff at the grocery store? Yeah, go ahead and use your credit card. Or, hey, Dad, I need to buy my books for the semester. Okay, go ahead and use a credit card. And I still have that card to this day. I still use it to this day. Versus my sister, who called my dad and said, there's a party tonight. I need that new pair of jeans. Now, of course, because it's my dad and my sister, the answer was always yes. That
Of course, dear.
new jeans for that party are an emergency. But that was always the need. I think my sister would have failed. In fact, as we record this, my mom, my sister, my niece, one of my niece's friends, and one of my sister's friends, they all did a girls' trip over to Disney.
Okay.
And so they're all at Disney as we record this. By the time it comes out, I think they'll be on their way home. But they posted a picture on Facebook. My mom has to use the little carts to get around Disney now.
Hmm.
And they posted a picture of my mom on Facebook. Literally, you couldn't see the cart. It was covered with bags of just stuff that they bought. I'm like, sorry, Dad, you fail the no spend challenge.
But they're Disney. It's a hard to say no. You get the collectible items or the T-shirt that you can't get anywhere else,
Yeah, they were at
and make.
downtown, or I'm sorry, Disney Springs is now. I
Oh,
know it
Disney
is.
Springs is even better.
I
Oh,
know it is
that's
downtown Disney, but they were at Disney Springs. So
that's a great place. I have to say, if you haven't been there, I would say you're definitely. I think they have the Candy Cauldron.
oh yeah,
That place, I will have a no spend issue in there as well. They have like this chocolate covered pineapple. Anyway, as you
wow.
can tell, my no spend is always about food. So I think I have a bigger problem
I
than
think I know what your needs and wants are now. It all relates, or it all revolves around food.
all about food and drinks. Let's go.
So, so we've got a couple articles that we pulled
Hmm.
today. As a reminder to those of you that are listening, you can get points in the no spend challenge by sending us stuff that you want us to talk about on the show.
Absolutely.
But we pulled up a couple of different articles that we thought we'd talk about today. Actually, George found all these, and I'll link them all. I get from the bankruptcy court, and so this first one, Americans are hiding their credit card debt, and I think what the article kind of goes on to say is that the average interest rate of a credit card now is over 20%. It's approaching 25%. And so
Yep.
people are just ashamed to admit that they have credit card debt. And I even find this a little bit in my practice in terms of, when someone's coming to me for a bankruptcy consultation, I always ask, how much debt do you have? And it's that pause of, do I really want to admit to the attorney how much debt I have? Now, what they say is confidential, and so I couldn't repeat it to anybody anyway.
Right.
And I had a client come in with I think the largest debt I've ever helped eliminate in a bankruptcy filing is something in the area of like 15 million.
Yeesh.
So there's not very many numbers that people can come in here and say that I would be like, wow, that's a lot of debt.
Right.
Now I get it. To me, someone comes in with $100,000 of debt, that's a lot. But when you've dealt with 15 million, 100,000 isn't
Add a
really.
few more zeros.
Yeah,
It's yeah.
just a
But
couple of
and some
commas.
people get worried when it's 1,000. It just depends on your situation, where you're at financially, and are you considering that particular number a crisis? Because I've seen people who have 100,000, 200,000 in debt, and they're like, yeah, no big deal. We'll manage that. We'll handle. I'll just make more money. So you just got to be careful in regards. I mean, people have to just be careful on how they view the debt itself,
Yeah.
and how they're managing it at
I
that
mean,
point.
my dad was always very secretive growing up. Not secretive. Secretive's not the right word, but he just didn't.
Private. I'll give
Private.
them private.
That's why I have a
Mhm.
co-host now to come up with these words that I don't know. Yeah, no, I think that's a very good explanation. He was very
Mhm.
private about how much he made, how much he owed. I mean, to this day, I still don't know how much my dad made. I can guess, based on the way that we grew
Right.
up, I can guess what it was. I know it was probably over six figures, but he was always very private. He didn't tell me how much debt that he had or how much he made. I mean, I guess the bills were, he would collect the bills by his computer, and then on the first of the month, he would go online and write all the. This was back in the days of checks and mail, and he would do
Yeah.
all that. So I guess I theoretically could have opened his mail and seen what he owed in debt, but he didn't really talk about it that much. Now I don't know if that was more a concern of he didn't want me to know, how much money he made. I don't think he had debt that he was embarrassed about. I think it was
Hmm.
more just keeping his finances private.
Yeah. I mean, and I have my mom. Never had those conversations with me as well. It was more. I like the private. Private is a better word. There was no shame behind it. It was no. It was just really more of like your kids. That's not something you need to worry about. If we had to talk about it, it always came through purchases, or we can't do this, or we can do these kind of things. That's when the conversation of money came about.
Right.
But let me tell you what I've been hearing in the TikToks, and in the world of social medias. A lot of the younger generation today, they've been more on this, I don't want to say freedom of having that conversation, but they're trying to eliminate that conversation. So it's hard enough in relationships to be like, hey, how much do you make? How's your money? What are you doing? But now they're trying to, it is very taboo to be able to like, hey, with your coworkers or other people that you may know, neighbors or something like, hey, how much do you make? How you doing?
Yeah.
That's a big private kind of thing, but it is something that is being discussed in like why should that be of shame? It should be I don't want to say it's the badge of honor kind of thing, but it is something that we hold very close to our heart when it comes to money and how much we make or how much debt we have.
Yeah. And this article kind of goes on to say the opposite of that is that people don't know how much interest they're paying every month.
Oh, yeah, okay, that
And
makes sense.
so one of the things the article suggests is to open up, consider opening up to someone about your finances, even if it's not your partner. Sharing
Yep.
concerns can be cathartic and potentially helpful, the report says, especially for someone who needs help getting out of debt. If
Yep.
you're able to come forward and share with someone, then you'll have less pressure. If you don't feel safe sharing finances with a partner or parent, consider professional help. And they list some credit counseling services. So,
And a financial coach, if
or
if
an
you know if you
attorney.
know one, if you
Yeah,
know one.
yeah, or an attorney.
Or
So,
an attorney. And that's the thing. I think encouraging people to have the conversation is important. We do tie shame to that conversation, and it has, with family, with spouses, with friends. And I think it's important sometimes to be able to like confronting the issue itself. One way of doing that is actually being able to talk about it, to be able to make it a reality. But a lot of people, it's like death, right? If you talk about it, oh, it's going to make it real. I was like,
right.
well, it's real already,
It's
regardless of how you think of it or not. it's one of those kind of things. The debt's there. Death is going to happen. So I don't want to be, doom and gloom there. But these kind of things itself, they're already there, whether we're hiding it or talking about it.
Although that also is a way to get out of debt, like we talked about last week, right? Death is a way to get out of debt.
That is one not a popular selection for
No,
for getting out of debt.
no.
That's for sure.
But I
I
agree.
got st-
Talking about it, I mean, I
Mhm.
journal every day. And so, getting those frustrations down. I was just telling a friend of mine earlier today that I was. I have some things going on in the future that I'll get into on the show in the future, but I needed to set up some contingency plans for what I've got going on, and I kept thinking to myself, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? How am I
Right.
going to do this? And writing about it, focusing on it, talking about it. The good news is I've now got the things that I was scared of happening in the future. I've now got contingency plans set up for if or when those things happen where I can continue on sort of without missing a beat, so to speak. So,
That makes sense.
what you kind of focus on is what you get done. So, couple other articles that you sent me. One of them I'll get into the headline because I'm not going to pay to read the article. Um,
We did a BuzzFeed. I like
yeah,
it. Go ahead. Let's do BuzzFeed and react to it.
there you
I
go.
love it.
I don't want my spendthrift husband to get his hands on my inheritance.
Okay. Uh, Sorry, Gary in Indiana.
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly. I think
Uh, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way to do this, I don't know what the article suggests. The part of the article that I can read, um, what do you think is fair regarding inheritance as a couple?
Okay.
I mean, I get it, but there are ways to do that. So you can set up a trust. You can
Yeah.
set up different estate planning devices, estate planning tools. You can set up different things where your husband won't get access to your inheritance or your spouse won't get
Right.
access to your inheritance.
I mean, I think a lot of it too. Are we young in the relationship in the marriage itself? Are we 15 years into the marriage? This might be a different relationship that we have at that point.
Are you already
Um,
having problems?
and you're already, and that's the thing. I think it always stems back to conversations with our spouses. I think a lot of relationship problems. I'm looking at statistics here. You know me, I like for some reason I like data, but 7 out of 10 couples they report that they have money as being the cause for tensions in their relationship.
Oh, I think
So I mean, that's pretty high in regards to, but a lot of them then turn around and like, well, we don't talk about money,
right,
but we talk to each other indirectly about money, meaning like I get upset when someone spends money,
right.
or maybe I've even seen discrepancies in am I using that word right?
Yeah,
I guess we'll find out in the way they make money, the way they spend money. That also causes issues in how that, like, hey, I'm the provider, or I'm not the provider itself, but that discrepancy, or that difference, I'll say it's a better word, it's difference, that also causes friction in the relationship as well. But I always look at money as those kind of discussions, those kind of issues and arguments stem to maybe other problems that are already in the relationship, and money is just one of those other issues that exacerbate the issues themselves.
yeah. And I think it should be a discussion that you have, early. What is your, if it's something that you foresee that this person could become a spouse, a longtime
Right.
partner, or whatever, you talk about what are your views on religion, what are your views on kids, what are your views on family. It can't hurt to
First date,
add.
first date, Shawn advice. So we're getting
Not
first date.
first, not. I said if you see that this could be something serious, not the first date. Um,
Although I am telling you right now, I'll shout out my sister, and I'll shout out some people who are going on those apps and going on these multiple first dates. There are crazy, no offense, okay, we won't label. There's some people that really go for those questions on the first date. And so my advice is, yeah, I would say if it becomes serious, it's important to maybe start to have those types of conversations because I agree with you. Money is one of those reasons that cause tension. Religion seems to be another one of those. Politics,
Politics.
politics. How is that? But yes, politics apparently is another
Politics in
reason.
this country is divisive.
I didn't know that. I thought we just had some money issues.
Yeah, exactly. Caused by our politics. Um, so yeah, so unfortunately, I can't exactly read the entire article, but
Right.
that was the headline. Another article
But
that
good
came,
advice. But before
yeah,
you go, but good advice for again, trust. There's ways to manage those situations if you get to that point. Is the what's the oh man, what's the thing regarding like a premarital or what's the no that
a
what's the
prenuptial.
prenuptial? Thank you, sir. That's why again that's why you are the host.
Exactly.
There's is that an option? I mean, not a popular option, but is there if we're protecting wealth, or we're protecting, we have a lot of those. Well, if I make this kind of money or I have this kind of inheritance itself, I want to protect it before I do get married. Is that another option, or how do people handle that kind of situation?
Yeah, I mean, people get strange about a prenuptial. I haven't done a lot with them because I don't do family law. I do have friends that do. And I kind of see the pros and the cons. I mean, some people say, well, I brought this into the marriage. I want to make sure that this spouse that I'm marrying, whether it be a male, female, whatever,
Right,
I want to make sure that the spouse I'm marrying is not in it for my money. So I want to
right,
protect what I've built from this person taking it away from me if we should later split. And on the other side, there's also the school of thought that when we agree, when things are good, that's when we put this prenup in front of the other person because, we don't ever anticipate that we're going to split. So what's the harm in signing it? But that
right,
is the other side of the argument is, well, wait a minute. You anticipate that we might split down the road. Otherwise, why would you be asking me to sign this thing? So
correct.
it's more of the logical versus the emotional aspect of it that people get caught up on. I mean, personally, for me, I did not have my wife sign one. And gosh, when I met my wife, I was part of the other law firm. And so I had not yet split off from, so I formed it. I had another law firm with law partners and whatnot. That's when I met her. We got married. That law firm came to an end. I split off from them and started Yesner Law. So I basically built this from scratch with my wife being there. With I
Yeah.
don't know that I want to say with her help, but with her, I guess with her help in terms of taking care of the house, taking care of the kids, doing all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not that she's worked in the law firm, but I never got one signed. Probably because I'm more the romantic of, the person that I'm going to want to get married to. I'm going to
Yeah.
want to be married to forever.
Forever and ever and ever. It's so similar. I mean, I've known my wife since high school, so we've been sweethearts for such a long time.
Oh,
Yeah, she might beg to like, I don't know if how she's doing it today. So God bless her. Thank you, honey, for dealing with me. But yeah, I think over time it just depends on the assets. We've had houses, we've had 401ks. So for me, it's more of like what are we gonna split between the two of us if the marriage dissolves? We're getting the house. I'm putting everything in her name. She's obviously the beneficiary for all the life insurance. So for me, it's more of just like we'll deal with those kind of things. But never came up as you could take half of my debt. You're more than welcome to do that. Can,
here's
can you do that? Is that legal?
here's half my debt. Enjoy. Although I will tell you, kind of bringing up a point on that topic. I know we're kind of going sideways here for a minute,
Yeah,
but
so no way.
yeah, whatever. It's our show. We can do that.
Exactly.
But that's one of the biggest things I come across when I'm talking to a client who is in the process of a separation or a divorce or a split or whatever. They always say to me, well, my spouse and I got this mortgage, for example, and my spouse is going to keep the house. I'm going to go to a different house, but I want to come off the mortgage. The only way to come off the mortgage is to refinance it or pay it off. And what I see a lot of divorcing couples or separating couples get into problems with is one will leave the house, but they won't leave the debt. Even if the divorce court says,
Mm,
husband, you leave, wife, you stay, wife, you're responsible to pay the mortgage. Even if that's what the divorce court says, the bank isn't going to care about that. The bank is going to
right.
say, our payments aren't being made. Husband and wife, you signed the note. Husband and wife, you're both responsible to pay us back. So I see a lot of divorcing couples get in trouble with that in terms of, but wait a minute, the divorce court said my husband had to pay the mortgage. Well, yeah, that's what the divorce court says, but that's not what the promissory note and the mortgage say. And you're bound by, the judge doesn't
The
have the
note.
authority to change the note and the mortgage.
But when you get that kind of ruling, is that then it on us to like refinance to put the mortgage in one person's name? That's the idea. It's more of
Yeah,
like this is how it is, but then it is the responsibility of the two to make sure that, from a legal with with the bank that
right.
that's taken care and reflective of the ruling. So that's a
Well,
good call out because I don't think any of us would think of like, oh, let me I will trust my spouse to make
right.
sure that they'll hold up in a divorce proceedings where there's no hurt feelings, right?
Well, and yeah, I've had spouses say, well, I'll default on the loan just to hurt her, or I'll default on the loan
Oh,
just to
yeah, I
hurt
mean, yeah,
him.
that makes sense. That
I'll
makes
cut
sense.
off my nose to spite my face.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
because they don't care. It'll hurt him or hurt them in the process. But obviously, it's more of the revenge or the I'll get you back type mentality.
right.
Oof. Okay. Okay. All right.
Interesting.
Well,
So,
what other articles did I send you?
so yeah, you sent me this one other one. Where is it? Here it is. My boyfriend wants to put an end to my money saving lifestyle. So I don't know if I want to read her question, but the gist of her question
The
is
gist, yes.
the gist of her question is she's more frugal, and so she buys secondhand clothes, she buys
Mm.
fixer upper furniture, she buys discounted items. She would totally destroy us in the no spend challenge. Uh, she
I like
uses
that.
she uses miles and points to travel. And so because of all this, even though her and her boyfriend make roughly the same amount of money, she spends less than he does.
Mm.
And so I think the problem is, um, do you think this is a big deal, like a relationship deal breaker, big deal? What kind of conversations do I need to have with him about our future? We haven't talked about this since, so I really don't know what's going on in his head. I just know something has felt off since we had this conversation. He looked disappointed. What do I do? And I think it was he wanted to spend something that she didn't want to spend, and his comment was something like, "Well, you have plenty of money. Why don't you want to spend it?"
Well, there's his first problem.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, all the stuff we've been talking about, red flags.
Right. Well, yeah, there you go. There's a relationship red flag that probably was like, well, hey, if it's if you're not going to be respectful in the marriage, and that's all that is throwing a dagger in a situation where it's like, well, I didn't get my way when, and let me make sure you hurt or feel bad because you didn't let me go and purchase or buy something that I wanted, and that's not fair. I mean,
Right.
obviously, if your spouse or your partner puts you in that kind of position where they're intentionally looking to make you feel bad, there's some red flags there that you need to really like. Is that person really good for you in that could be just one instance. There's probably other instances that they can probably talk about.
Well, and that's what the answer was. Communication is the key when moving in with your
Yeah.
partner. I recommend setting up a standing money date. This will be a time to meet in a comfortable environment to discuss your finances, set financial goals, check in with each other about spending. Aim to chat about finances at least once a month. So,
I would say once a month, I guess that makes sense if you're going budget to budget, month to month. New clients that I work with, I usually encourage at least once a week getting together, no more than 15 minutes to really again look at what spending have we done against the budget in the previous week. What are we planning to spend, and are there any changes that we need to make as part of categories, things that we're tracking, and if there's a request, we have that conversation together. So we want to try to eliminate the impulse buys, so I'll give the guy in this article the credit. At least he asked and talked like, hey, I'd like to purchase this. So that is a form of conversation, because a lot of people, they'll just buy the thing and, I'll deal with the repercussions afterward.
Right.
But in this instance, there was at least an ask for it, but
Yeah.
there has to be an agreement on what the purchase would be at that point.
Yeah, I don't know that a monthly meeting is that bad. I mean, I do my finances once a month. I do my budgeting and my finances and everything once a month. But I don't know. I could see doing it maybe once or twice a month, maybe
Yeah.
even once a week. I get it. I mean, for me, my style is once a month. I look at all the finances. I know what my budget is. I know what I have to spend. But I guess
But you
everybody's
are
different.
you are disciplined, my friend.
Yeah.
When we've got 70% of people live in a paycheck to paycheck. You've got the habits that and the discipline itself that's puts you in that position where I think once a month. I think for a lot of folks, we need to build that muscle. We need to build that kind of exercise to be able to work up to that once a month where you're kind of like, I've got paid. And a lot of people too, they get paid weekly. They get paid bi-weekly, depending on the type of job that they're working through as well. And I always say, whenever there's income that's in, you should know where it's going. And I think that's as part of your budget. It's like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Here's what I'm doing with this money itself. Hey, honey, are you okay? Are we good? As if you're married, of course. Like, hey, do we agree on what we're spending this money on? Now, if we're dating, are you getting that's where, again, it's a little different when you're dating, because it's really still you and that partner. I mean, if
Right.
you're living together, maybe there's a shared responsibility of some of the utilities and rents, so there's still a split on some of that work, on some of that. So there still needs to be having a little bit of a conversation there. But I don't know if I would be as committed from a relationship perspective of like, hey, we're dating itself, and I'm like, oh, you're my roommate for now, unless we get committed, unless we get married.
If you don't put a ring on it, we're just going to be roommates.
I would agree. That's Beyonce had a point in her song, so I'll definitely agree there.
So,
But I mean, that's a tough one, I would say. We saw some red flags already, so I'm
yeah,
like, you might want to reconsider the partner, especially with that kind of dagger that he kind of threw in there.
right. So, last one, and then we can kind of wrap up. I'm kind of
Okay.
curious about this one. It says, and I don't like the answer that the author gave, so you and I will just answer it. I need some help with a cost benefit analysis of paying off my full credit card balance versus keeping my emergency fund. Um, Last year, I finally met my emergency fund goal and started saving to pay off my credit cards. I was saving to pay off the full amount.
Right.
I then got laid off from a job that was a bigger promotion. When
Okay.
My promotion was the only reason I had saved so much, and now I'm saving only a fraction of what I used to save. I'm not very optimistic about my ability to make much more money in the future. I think at this point I have enough to pay off my credit cards if the companies will settle. I'm wondering if that's a bad
Hmm.
idea. So, with the job I have now, I won't be able to pay the full amount of my credit cards for 3 to 5 years, assuming I keep my job. What are your thoughts? So basically, it sounds like from the question, she's got her emergency fund saved up, and she's
Right.
saved up enough to attack the credit cards, but not
Right.
pay them off in full.
She's made a progress, but she was making progress with the previous job. And it seemed like she lost her job, and now she's, I guess, got another job or a demotion or however she wanted to describe it. And then all of a sudden now it's like, well, I'm not making as much progress as I was in the past.
Right.
Okay.
So, what would you tell her to do?
Well, I would definitely not dip into the emergency fund, because I always say that life is always going to happen. So there's always a situation where, medical, car, or anything that we deem as emergencies itself, something's going to happen. So dipping into that emergency fund is going to, or depleting it is going to put you in a vulnerable position where if something were to happen that is deemed emergency, where again, first thing you're going to need to do is go and get money somewhere, and that's usually debt in this situation. So I would definitely not go there. There is opportunity that if depending on how much is in the emergency fund, so if there's 3 to 6 months, I mean,
I,
if she feels
I
like
think in
she'll
the
lose her
question,
job,
I think in the question she said she had 8 months.
8 months. Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say maybe it's, if there's a not, because it depends on how they, how they feel, in their security with the money. Because if you're doing an 8 month emergency fund, there's probably some backstory there where it's like, oh, I've had some troubles in the past, and it makes me feel better. Using some of that emergency fund, maybe down to 6 months, 3 months, depending on the amount of debt you have, there's an opportunity there to maybe pay it down a lot faster if that's the case. And again, if it's 10,000, that maybe something like that. Maybe that's an option that you can look into.
Yeah.
I wouldn't deplete it to zero, but
No.
maybe there is an opportunity to say, hey, how secure is your job today? And if you're okay with it, let's get it down to 3 months and then use the rest to maybe snowball the speed for paying down that debt itself.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. Originally, when you said that, I was like, wait a minute. If you can cannibalize some, not all, and I agree with you. Don't use
Mm-hmm.
all of the emergency
Mm-mm.
fund, but if you can use some of the emergency fund,
Yep.
because remember the issue is if you can pay off the debt, even if you have to invade some of your emergency fund, you're no longer going to pay that 24-25% interest. And so even though your salary has gone down, your ability to save has gone up
Yeah.
because your minimum payments aren't going towards the cards anymore. You can turn around and pay those minimum payments
Put it
back
put it
to the
right back
emergency
into the
fund.
savings. I agree.
So I think you could do that. The only thing that I don't know, the only thing that I might suggest against, and again, it depends on the county, depends on, or the state, depends on where you are, but I wouldn't necessarily jump to settling with the
Yeah.
credit cards. I mean, if you can, you can, but the problem is most credit card companies will have no incentive unless or until you fall behind on the debt. And I don't like advising people to intentionally fall behind because
Right.
then we go down the road of lawsuits and garnishments and all that craziness. I guess it wouldn't hurt to call the bank and say, hey, I've got, $5,000. I know I owe you 8. Would you take it and go away? The worst they're going to do is say no.
Yeah.
But
No. Yeah.
but I think the danger becomes intentionally defaulting on the 8, hoping that they'll take 5 in the future. Well, if they don't, now you're going down the path of a lawsuit and whatnot. So I think settling the debt is a good strategy. But if you're already current, there are some other factors that need to play in there.
Yeah. I would say if you're going down crisis mode, there's opportunity there that might come down. But I think a lot of people you hear on TikTok and you hear again a lot of social, a lot of geniuses out there.
I know where
I was
you've been
like,
hanging out on this New Jersey trip.
woof. Okay, so, but what I've been hearing it's out there is like, oh, they'll settle on the dime, on the dollar, dime on the dollar. They'll settle on this. It's so easy that trust. So just get yourself in that situation, and you can work your way to getting it on the dime of the dollar. And I'm like, it just,
No.
I know, it doesn't work as easy, but yet you get sold on that, and I'm just gonna I'll just go into default. I won't pay this off, and I'll just settle down the road. Like the credit cards are gonna be like, yeah, just give me $10, we'll be good. But unfortunately that's the message out there, and I would say I'd like to hear the fact that you're like, no, that's not the case.
Yeah, that's not how it works at all. I mean, even me, my average is around 35-40 cents on the dollar, and so average that means I've settled some for 0%, I've settled some for 10%. But I've settled others for 80 and 90%. So, to say that your creditors will settle for 10 cents on the dollar, that just isn't true. I mean, it may be, but by and large, it's not true.
It's not in general. It feels like that's a general statement that keeps getting said, that they'll just quickly settle.
Exactly.
And I know quickly is probably not the word either. It'll take some time before you even get to that point where you can start those discussions.
Well, and especially in this day and age, I think settlements become a little bit more difficult as the
how's that?
economy. Well, as the economy has perceived to be getting better, creditors are less likely to take less money.
Gotcha.
So,
good point. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad that
So
we know that, it's getting better out there.
yeah. So
Even though the prices of everything is
even
not.
though prices are crazy, student loans are about to come due again. But yeah, sure, the economy's getting
Sure,
better.
it's all good.
Sure.
A-okay.
So
All right, brother.
I think we've reached the end of another episode.
I like the fact that now we've solved so many issues, and now we've solved
We've solved
relationship and
relationship
dating.
issues. We've solved all kinds of yeah.
I do like to hear any comments around this. I know Shawn and I, it is our opinion in regards to how to handle relationships itself. But obviously, if there's any comments, I'd be curious to hear, what people have to say when it comes to money and communication, and what suggestions, do we have? I know some of them, it's just so easy to be able to like just have a conversation, just have a meeting. What do you guys do when it comes to having the private
The money
conversation of
conversation.
money
Yeah.
and politics and romance?
Cool.
Anyway, sorry,
Well,
buddy. Going down the rabbit hole again.
Have fun. Have fun in New Jersey. Have fun hanging out. Have fun with your daughter.
Appreciate it. I will visit the Freedom Tower and the Statue of Liberty. So I'll let you know. I'll take some pictures and obviously make that available. But yes, I'm
dude,
excited. I'm going to be a tourist.
I should have sent you up there with some crushing debt stickers. You could have slapped one on the Statue of
Oh,
Liberty.
oh, dude. I think. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're gonna have to print them out now, and I'll just do that.
Actually, you probably should take like a competitor's podcast and put a sticker. If you're going to go after somebody for defacing the Statue of Liberty, go after one of our
That's funny. Like,
competitors.
who is this crushing debt guy? Okay, that makes sense.
So
I love it. All right, brother.
meanwhile,
But yeah,
I'm going to stop. I'm going to
show.
stop talking before we say more dumb stuff.
You got it.
So I think that'll do it for this week's episode, thankfully, of the Crushing Debt podcast, where hopefully you are able to have more money at the end of the month rather than month at the end of the money. Wow, I almost didn't say that correctly.
I like it.
So I'm going to stop this train wreck here, and we will talk to you in next week's episode of the podcast.